So while loops are similar to for loops, but they work slightly differently. As a reminder, for loops have an initial value of their counter variable, and then an instruction to usually increase that counter variable one by one, until this middle statement is no longer true. With a while loop, it works slightly differently. So let's see how this might work. We can actually recreate this whole bit of code in a while loop reasonably easily. And the way we do it is this. So first of all, we define our counter variable outside of the loop this time. And then we change for to while. And then we get rid of that initial statement because we don't need it anymore. Get rid of the last statement because we don't need that anymore. And then we put an instruction to increment I inside the loop. So just to run that through, we're initially setting I to 0, and then as long as, that's what you should think of while as meaning, as long as I is less than the length of my array, then it will continue to do this code. And obviously we're increasing I by 1 each time there, so it effectively does the same thing as our for loop. Let's just check that. There we go, we've got the same thing. So normally they are interchangeable, but in some circumstances you might want to use a while loop. While loops are particularly useful when you don't know quite how long the loop is going to be. So what we're going to do here is try and do the reverse of our number guessing game. So instead of you guessing how many fingers the computer was holding up, we're going to get the computer to guess how many fingers you're holding up. Might sound a bit weird, but it'll make sense. Let's see how this is going to work. So we're going to start with an input, and we'll call it my number. And we'll have a question in a paragraph tag. How many fingers are you holding up? Okay, and then you write in a number from 1 to 5. And we'll have a button with an ID of guess. And close that button. So just to see how that looks, we're doing it differently this time. So if you guess 2, what we want the computer to do is to guess randomly until the computer gets it right. And that's quite a nice use for a while loop. So let's get rid of all of this and start our code. So first of all, we need to have a function which we're going to enact when the button is pressed. Again, I'll give you a moment or two to write that down yourself. Okay, hopefully you wrote document.getElement by ID guess dot onClick equals function. There we go. Okay, so what we want the computer to do is to make several guesses at a random number until they get the right one. So how do we do that? Let's create a variable x, and it's going to be an opportunity here to remind ourselves how we create a random number generator. So see if you can remember how to do that. Hopefully you said math.random. Okay. Now that creates a number between 0 and 1. We want a number between 0 and 5, but we're going to round it down like we did before. So let's say x equals 6 times x, just like we did before, and then x equals math dot floor x. Okay, let's just alert x. I like doing things like that because it allows a chance to just make sure that we're in the right ballpark here. So we've got a couple of 2s, 0s. Okay, this looks like it's doing the right thing. Great. Okay. So now we need to check whether or not x is equal to our particular value or not. So if document.getElement by ID, and we want the my number value this time. So that's going to be the value of the number that we put in the box. Equals, 2 equals this time because we're testing whether or not it's equal to, is equal to x. Then we'll alert, I got it. It was a, and then we'll put the number on the end there. So just to check what's happened there, if the value that you've put or that the user has put in that box is equal to x, that is the guess, then the computer will say, I got it, it was a whatever that might be. Now what if the computer didn't get it? We want some code there. So this is just going to do that whole thing once. What we want to do is to loop this round and round until the computer gets it right. So let's put this all inside a while loop. In fact, I think we need to do some indenting here. Keep track of everything. So while, and then for the moment we'll just put empty brackets. Start and close that. Okay, that looks nice. So what we want to keep doing is looping round this until this is no longer true. So what we'll do is we'll create a variable called GotIt. And we'll set it initially to false. Now this is a new type of variable called a Boolean variable. You can look that up and find out a bit more about it if you want, but for now we'll just use it. It's essentially a variable that can be true or false. That's only 2 possible values. Right, so we want to keep going through this loop until the GotIt variable turns out to be true. So we'll initially set it to false, and then we'll set our instruction for our while loop to keep going as long as GotIt is equal to false. And then when we've actually got it, we'll say GotIt is equal to true. Excellent. Looking good. So it would be nice to keep track of how many guesses the computer took to get there. So let's create a new variable called guesses. So that initially equal to 1 because the computer's got to take at least 1 guess. And then guesses plus plus. Remember that just increases guesses by 1. So if the computer gets it wrong, it just increases the number of guesses each time. Okay. Now one thing we don't want to do is to define this variable each time we go through the loop. We only want to define it once, so we'll define it at the top there and then just make a new random number out of it each time. Okay, that looks good. So all we need to do now is to add an instruction at the end to tell the player how many guesses it took for the computer to get it. Let's give it a go. So we'll alert, got it. It was an X. So X is going to be the value. We could just as well use the document getElement by ID my number as well if we wanted to. So it was a whatever that number is. It only took me, and the guesses variable, guesses. Okay, Let's give it a go. I'm going to say 3. Got it. It was a 3. Got it right. It only took me 8 guesses. Okay, let's see how long it generally takes the computer. 5 guesses. 11 guesses. Gosh, the computer's not very good at this. 13 guesses, etc, etc. Okay, so quite a fun game and a good use of our random instruction that we learned a few videos ago, and also of while loops. Now, one thing to really be aware of here is you've got to be very careful of while loops that could possibly go on forever, because they're likely to crash your user's computer. And this is definitely one of those. So this will work fine as long as you put a number 0, 1, 2, 3 or 5 in this box. If you don't put a number 0, 1, 2, 3 or 5 in this box, then the computer will never get it right, so it will go on forever. Now, some browsers will treat this quite well and they won't crash, but some browsers will just completely crash. So there really should be an instruction somewhere that if guesses reaches 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 or whatever you think is reasonable, then get out of this loop and do something else and just say, I give up, or something like that. So I'll leave that as an exercise for you to have a go at doing. But in its current form, this program works, but is not great at dealing with errors if the computer guesses something like a 7 or an 8.